What's going on, everyone? Tolberto Games here. So a lot of the recent stuff that I've been doing on my Twitch channel is Clone Hero. I've been playing a lot of that for the past couple of days, and I've gotten a couple of questions about people trying to get into charting and people asking me to do charts on stream. So the charting process itself is a little long and extensive, a little bit too much for a stream. Especially if my viewership is a little smaller and I don't want to outcast people who aren't that interested in it. So I thought I might make a YouTube video instead. May make it a little bit easier and a little bit shorter form for people to understand and compress it into something that's 20 minutes as opposed to 4 to 5 hours, which is sometimes what this can be. So I thought I'd just go through my checklist when I make charts that make it sound good, make it playable and fun to play, as well as all the sections that you would need to make a good chart, such as star power and solo sections and lyric support. So let's go ahead and get into the charting. So the first thing that I do, so I use Moonscraper. Moonscraper is the software that I think is best for me, at least. The first thing that you'd want to do is pull in the song that you want to play. So if we go ahead and load up from here, you find wherever you saved your audio files. I'm going to be doing a Daughtry What I Want because I got a request from that on my last YouTube video that I posted. So we're going to go ahead and pipe in all the data for it. So we finally got all the data in. We've got the title of the song, the artist, the charter name. I use this pseudonym for my stuff since I'm going to Tolberto Games on Twitch. The album, the year, and all this other stuff. The offset is essentially what you'd have to do if the audio is a little out of sync, but I'm going to teach you how to do the sync in a second. The difficulty, I always put this into the .ini later, another thing that I'll run over. Genre, media type, all this doesn't really matter. The other thing that you can do if you can find stem files of the song is you can separate it into basic song audio and then each of the instruments, which will allow you to have volume control in the game. So like if you want the bass audio to be softer because you're playing the guitar part, you can bump it down if you have these separated. The only thing there is if you have both the song and the guitar audio, you have to make sure that they're synced up exactly or that they're stripped separately so that the parts that you don't have instruments for, they play over that way. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to need to sync up the song. So we're going to go into the BPM calculator, and I also, whenever I chart, I always put up the song waveform. So this will just import any song that you have and put this little nice waveform on the background that'll allow you to see where the hits are of like, I'd assume these are the drum parts right here. And then on occasion, you'll have like the guitar solos towards the end, and you see these little bumps that would be essentially where you'd want a note to be. So we'll go ahead and listen to the song through once while we're playing this through. Got a 132, 133 for the BPM. So you go all the way down to the back, hit on this global event, and you have the BPM right here. So I'm going to go ahead and assume it's a 133. And then it's in 4/4 time as well. So just two things about the music that you have to know. It's how fast it goes. The higher the number, the closer these bars come together. And then this is 4/4 timing, so that it's the amount of notes that you have in a certain amount of time. So you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll go from here. So 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4/4 timing is essentially what most songs are going to be on. Occasionally you'll run into something that goes into a 3/4, or we'll mess with this if we have any weird lagging parts that slow down in the middle of a song, and we'll get onto that. So like if 3 parts of the measure are same beat, then you can typically just go from the BPM, but you might want to run with this if you have an intro or something. So we're going to go ahead and sync this up. So there are 2 ways to sync up. I've gone through and I've found the downbeats on these and put the little measure notes on the side, which you just use by clicking this button, and you can click anywhere you want. So the first way that I would try to do this is you would just match the BPM so that you have 1 bar, so it's a 1/4 time, and you make sure that this white bar right here hits exactly onto this 4/4 mark. This way makes the highway seem a little bit less crowded, or more crowded if you have to speed up the BPM in comparison to the rest of the song. So I'm going to walk through just adding silence to the front on the other end. But we have to slow it down just quite a bit because that white line's in front. So let's go ahead and see where that downbeat's supposed to hit. So it's right around there. So let's type in, so that mark, red mark right there now keeps with us. 90 seems about right. So then we put this right here. 2, 3, 4, 1. Now we can go ahead and clear out the rest of these. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So it seems to be pretty synced up, but then you see these little gaps that you have right here. So at the front of the song, it's a little slower, so these highways look a little less clean. So that's one way to do it. It's the easiest way to do it. If you don't mind these bars being a little out of the way, then you can do it this way. So the second option is we add silence to the front of the song so that it actually syncs up exactly where it is based off of the already existing global event for BPM and the measures. So we have to get this white line to match up here. So then we have to look up at this top right corner where the time code is and figure out where the match is. So on this white bar we have 180 and we'd want it to hit right around 247. So it's about a 0.67 difference in the time. So you take this audio, drop it into any audio editing software. The one that I'm going to use today is Adobe Audition, and you just add silence to the front of the song. So here we are in Adobe Audition. I've already imported the song that we're going to be using. It's important that you're using the same file, because if you save it this way, then when you pull the chart back up, the chart will automatically catch this file and import it. But the hard thing about this is you can't save it while it's open in Moonscraper. So we're going to go ahead and save the Moonscraper chart just onto here. Replacing it's fine, and we'll close out, go to this. So if you use Audition, the easiest way that you can do this is just go to Edit, Insert, Insert Silence. And then it allows you to insert the exact amount of time that you'd want on the silence, which ours was about 0.67 seconds of silence. And then you just go back in, make sure you're saving it to the exact same spot. It'll overwrite, it's lossless audio, and on occasion it'll have this little error message. We just got to go through, make sure it saves correctly. There's that little scroll wheel that you can tell that it's saved. So now we can go back into the chart and open it from there. Moonscraper chart editor. And then we'll load this chart back up again. That's the wrong one. So then we'll just go in and we'll load this chart back up again. What I want chart. And we'll check the Mac. So we're a little far past. Alright, so after some tweaking and trying around to get that synced up, we've got this downbeat right where we want it. So this is the 1, the thick bar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and anchor this with the beat per minute that we'd want. So now this one will stay exactly where it is at all times, and nothing before it can be changed. So we can get this, and we can just consistently move forward and redo all of the BPMs for this just to match up all the downbeats for the future of the song. Because even if we go a little further forward, sometimes songs 2, 3, 1, 2. So here's the downbeat now. We're about halfway through the song and the downbeat's over here. So essentially what we're going to have to do is we scroll through the entire song, placing some of these BPM things, get them to match up. You can also not do whole numbers on these. If you really want to, you can go like 133.5, because we were about 133 to 132 on that last one. So 132.5 probably is a good starting point. But if you need it a little faster for one section, just bump it up. And then if you can do it even halfway through the next section, you can put this back down to 120. And then it makes this entire section right here match around the BPMs. So then I typically just go all the way through and match all my BPMs. Alright, so we scrolled through most of the tempo changes. It seems this song was pretty straightforward, so it's not too many. Just this 132 at the front, and then it pretty much rode all the way through the song until we got to the end, where we had to slow it down just a little bit for this section at the part right here. And all we had to do is make sure that these two hard hits at the end were matched up at that point. So now we actually get to start placing notes. So the biggest thing that I would change just to start is typically the default step is on 1 of 16, which means that you get to place a 16th note throughout every measure. So musically, if you have a 4/4 count and a 16th note is going to be, one note, you can place 16 notes between the 4/4 measures. So I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you get to another downbeat. So it's 16 there. But that gives you a little less leeway when it comes to placing notes exactly where you want them. So I bumped this up to 64. 64 is typically okay for most songs, but if you really need to, you want to make sure you're always doing it on steps of double. So you can go to 64 to 128. The 96 works for triplets and really like syncopated stuff, but not as much for just basic rock songs that you'd want to chart. And then you essentially just listen through and figure out where you start. So here's our first note right here. And it sounds like he's doing power chords that charge up. So we're going to go ahead and play some power chords. Alright, so we've got our first string of notes put together. So we'll go ahead and listen back and watch it up. So the other thing that you can do if you really want to make sure that it matches with the actual strums of the guitar, is you can turn on this clap. So you go to settings, you want to make sure that your setting is on strum so that it will actually make an audible noise whenever you pass a note that is a hard hit like this. So an actual strum. It won't do this for hammer-ons or anything like that, but then you check this box and whenever you play through the song, so you have just a tiny little guitar strum sound in the background that'll allow you to match everything up to make sure it's there. Now that we have our first section charted, I'm just going to go through a couple of these tools that you can use besides the global event ones that we've already gone over. So the basic select and move tool just allows you to click and drag a note wherever you want it to. The eraser tool just gets rid of a note. Then there's the note placing tool, which we've already gone over. You just drag and drop, you click. If you drag a line right here, it'll go at the step that you have. So this is 1/64 notes, which typically you won't need to use unless you're using the short 1/16, which you can actually chart sometimes that way. The 4/4s, the BPMs that we've already gone, and the star power is the other thing that you'll need to know. So if you have a star power, it'll pull up this little thing on the left side of the highway. So you just click and drag. And then wherever you stop is where the star power phrase is going to end for you. So when you export this chart right here, if somebody plays these 8 notes in succession, they get star power for it. Pretty simple. And typically what I do is for each section of the song, I have at least one star power phrase. And when I say section, I mean these things. So these little sections will go straight into the global event option, which you can then place these along the side over here, the right side of the highway, which will allow you to both jump between, say we have this intro section right here and the chorus at the end that I have. And then you can just click on this little white button and it'll immediately take you to the front of where you place this section. And these sections are also seen at the end whenever you finish a song on the right side of the stat table, that little segmented percentage option that you have. That's where you get these placed in. So then you can click on them and you have the title changing over on the right side. So if we have this intro right here, we can put anything that we'd want in here. So beginning, if you wanted to name it that. And then whenever you export it like that, it'll pop up from there. And then we'll just ride through the rest of the song to figure out where all the sections would be placed. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Alright, so we have all these sections over here on the right side. I'll move the webcam just shortly so we can see everything. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and place the solo markers. So if we go to this solo section that I have right here, we can go to the non-global event and place one of these red flags. So make sure this isn't highlighted and place a red flag. And then you just go to solo. and then you go to the end of the solo where it is, and then you hit solo end. So now you have that set, so whenever somebody gets to this section right here, they'll have that little percentage that pops up on the top of the screen whenever you're playing. That will show you how much of the solo you're actually hitting. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is changing the difficulty of the chart. So if you're wanting to chart something for all 4 difficulties, I chart on expert first and then work backwards. So you make sure that you're on the expert difficulty, which we already are. But then if you go down to the hard, all these notes disappear. So the easiest thing to do is you just you can scroll through whenever you're finished, do a click and drag, and then go to the very top, and it'll allow you to copy the entirety of the song, including these solo sections over the end, as well as the star power. So you typically do this after you finish the expert version of the chart. And then it'll allow you to jump over here, and then whenever you want, you can just paste all those notes in that you just had. So Moonscraper is not just charting for the guitar parts as well, it also charts for other instruments. So in the same way that you can do difficulty selects here, expert through easy, you can do instrument selects. So you can have a guitar, you can have a guitar co-op, which is just the second lead guitar. So if you're playing with a second person, it plays kind of like the backup part. The bass guitar, the rhythm, which would essentially be some option that you can have for like main leads, a 4-lane drum set, a 5-lane drum set, keys if you have any kind of electronic piano, the GH Live guitar, which is those 2 rows of 3 buttons, and same for GH Live bass, 2 rows of 3 for bass parts. So you can go through those, and each time that you have to do that, you have to chart it separately as well. So you can do a lot of different stuff on a lengthy amount of charting for just one song if you want to get it to full compatibility. So we've covered the move tool, eraser tool, note placement, star power, BPM, and time measurements, the events, the non-global events, and next up is the global events. So global events will include things like lyrics, or if you want any of the controls that you have for like the crowd noise around, which is typically just stuff from the older Guitar Hero games. So we'll go straight into the first verse. So what you want to start with when you're doing a phrase is you place one of these here. And so you have these 3 options when you want to do lyrics. So phrase start will have the beginning of the phrase. So this will be exactly when it switches up and slides up into the lyric position. So the first thing to know about doing the lyric support is you want to chart by the syllable that you're using, not the actual word. So if you have words that are longer than 1 syllable, each section of that word is going to be a different global event that you'd place right here. So for the first line that you'd have from this song, it always seemed that I was sorry for the things that I did. So you'd have words like always and sorry that are longer than 1 syllable. So you'd have to have 2 different global events for this. But you go down to here, click lyric, and then you can just type in what the actual lyric is on the right side. So the thing about multi-syllable lyrics that you'd have to add is this little hyphen that you see on the right side. So that's where the actual syllable ends. So then we'll go to the next word, and we can just type in the rest of it. So now when Clone Hero reads this, it'll read it as 1 word, but that little orange highlight that sings by syllables, so like always, and it would separate them so that the highlights are different. So we'll just go ahead and place through all these. All right, so we have all the lyrics charted out on the left side and the phrase start here. So another thing that you can do with this clap is if you turn on the global event and check that, then it will do the actual clicks for every time that you have one of the syllables pop through. So it then sounds like it makes sure and matches up. So when you get to the end of one of these phrases, I typically gauge where the end of the phrase is to the start of the next one. So it looks like it ends here and the next one starts around here. So you'd want to put an end close to where it actually is, and then you place your next start before the next lyric is. So it gets a little messy on the side. They still have these going vertically instead of horizontally, which I kind of prefer. I would prefer them to go horizontally, but the verticals just get a little messier for you. So you can see a little bit of the overlap, and then especially when you get to these phrase end sections, then you get really rough around the edge. But then you just go through and you chart all of the lyrics from front to back. So lyric support is actually one of the most time-consuming ways of charting, because then you have to actually input and manually input the words one by one and place them So it gets a little bit more tedious than actually note placing, because note placing is a little more fun in my opinion, but it makes for a good chart, especially if you're trying to get out there and make it look a little bit more professional. So go all the way through. The other thing about this is if you'd really want to, you can do the same kind of option that you have where you have the click and drag, and then you can just copy the lyrics. The important part about this is the paste function is based off of where the first phrase in the note is. So even if you click and drag from here, the paste option will always paste from the first selection that you have. So you have to make sure that you have this red spot on the exact same spot that you have the original. So I always place these either on the bars or in the center of these bars, so I know exactly where to place them. So another thing to note that you can do is these options up at the top after you've charted these notes. You can change the playback speed. So if you have the times 1 is base playback speed. If you want to slow it down just a little bit so you get some separation between the notes, so that'll allow you any kind of fast solos that you do, that'll allow you to chart those a little bit better. As well as you have the highway length option, which will essentially just stretch this highway out to the back. So if we go back to where we started, it shows you all of the notes that you have in quick succession. So if you want to make sure that an entire section kind of matches with the rise and fall of the song, that you can have this long length that you can place. And it also allows you to do more copy and paste. So if you have the chorus from here to here, then it allows you to have more sections to do copy and paste from. You also have the hyperspeed, which then stretches it out. So this would be the note speed that comes by. So it's still at the same playback speed, but you see them at a little later of a time. So you can have a long highway length with low hyperspeed, but I typically like doing highway length around here and my hyperspeed about like mid-range, because that's typically how I play. So that's how I'd want to be able to see them. So after you've charted everything that you want, you can actually go through and play it in Moonscraper to make sure it's actually what you want it to be. And you can see that it also catches my misses and everything if I'm not strumming. So it's one of the really nice things that you can do. You can play it in Moonscraper before you actually have to export it to Clone Hero, which is the next piece that we're going to be talking about. So when you're finally done with your chart, you go up to the top left here, go to File, Export, and check the Clone Hero package. Then typically you can export directly wherever your Clone Hero stuff is. So I have all my Clone Hero songs, and then I have a folder in my song folder that's my charts. So if you've labeled everything correctly, if you select here, you go to select folder, and it'll re-encode to the .ogg format for the audio. And then we can pull up the export that we just did. So it's in my charts, Daughtry, it'll be named what I want because that's what the chart name is. So we can go into here, and it has the song.ogg file, which is the audio for it, the INI, and the chart. So the chart right here is where the actual notes and the global events and the solo parts and the star power stuff is placed. The INI is actually the information on it. So typically what I do with the INI is I have an icon set up. So I change this so that the icon, whenever I have the charter on here, it also will pull up my icon on the bottom left on Clone Hero. I'll show everybody what that means and what that looks like. And then you can change the difficulty on the song. So my guess is as a slash song with a decent solo at the end and some interesting power chord moves, either a 2 or 3. I'm going to put it at probably a 3 just for now. And then you can go ahead and you can save that INI and close out. And so then when you have here. So the next thing that you'd want to do to make this fully compatible is you'd want to pull in an album artwork for you. So I just go on, I've already charted one from this same album, the Overview album. So it's the same album cover. So you can just go ahead and paste it in. Either that, or you can go through Google image search and then save as. And the important part here is that the title of the actual album is just named album, because then it'll recognize it from there and pull it back. So the next thing that you might want to do is add a preview. So if you go back to the song that you have, typically about 20 seconds in is where you'd want it to start, about a 25 to 30 second preview. So you just cut these two out. And then if you're using Audition, you just have a short fade in for 3 seconds. and a short fade out for about the same amount of time. And then you can save this as, let's go back to where we were. Make sure you save it directly into the same folder. So my charts, what I want featuring slash, and instead of having it this time, you name it preview.mp3. So we saved this preview audio into the back right here. So typically when I finish my charts, I have 6 things in here. So this is the album artwork that you'd want, the notes that you'd have to be able to play the song, the preview so that when you're on the title, when they're on the song selection screen, it pulls up this audio to play instead, the INI, which is all the information that shows up on the right side of Clone Hero screen, the song.ogg, which is the actual audio that it pulls to play behind the chart, and then I have my icon. So we'll go ahead and pull up this chart in Clone Hero and see what it looks like. So we go ahead and pull up the quick play and search for that song. So it already plays that preview that we had. It has all of the information over here on the right side. So the artist, the album, who charted it, the genre, the year, and it even has the icon right here. So we'll go ahead and we come in, and you can see that we've only charted for lead guitar, and we only charted for expert difficulty, and then all the modifiers the same way. And you go into the song, and it plays just like you'd want it to. So that's essentially how you go through just the rough basics of charting something to put into Clone Hero. So before I ever post my charts anywhere, either on Reddit or YouTube or anything, I typically export them and make sure that they're actually playable in Clone Hero. So just give it a test. I do it 2 ways. I test for the notes to make sure the notes are exactly how I want them, and I test for the lyric support. So as on occasion, you'll either leave out a phrase start or phrase end, and then a lyric phrase won't pop up where you want it to. And then the final step is just doing it into a zip file. So if you use Clone Hero at all, I assume you have some version of a compressor or zip format. So either to open the .rars or the .zips. So this is what this is right here. It's a compressed version of that. So if I go ahead and I right click here, go to 7-zip, add to what I want featuring /.zip, and then it gives you a little zip file. This zip file you can upload directly to either Chorus or Google Drive, or find some place on the internet to post it. And whenever somebody has to go through and extract it, we'll just go through the archive. So it gives you this exact same folder, which has all 6 of the options that you'd want in here, as well as the modification dates and everything that you'd want, which people can then extract and directly put this into their song folder. So it makes it easiest for them to have them import directly into Clone Hero. So I hope this video is helpful for those who are looking to get into charting with Moonscraper. There are a couple of other softwares that you could also use, and Moonscraper is not to your taste. I don't have them. There are a couple of other good videos that you can find that will help you learn those charting softwares. So the basic checklist that you'd want to go through every single time that you go is you want to make sure the song is synced to the BPM and the measures. Then you'd want to go do your sections. So intros, verses, choruses up on the right side. Then you want to go through and do your note placements. After you do your note placements, you find spots for the star power. Make sure the star power is on there. And then you'd have your lyric support. Lyric support is typically what I do last when I chart, just because it's not always required. Sometimes you have songs that are just instrumentals, or sometimes you don't want to try and put the lyrics in there, which is fine. It just makes it look a little bit more professional if you do the lyric support that way. So then we move into the export phase. So you want to make sure that that export goes through the Clone Hero package checkmark, as well as directly into your song pack. It makes it easier if you do it that way. Then you go into the folder. The folder originally should just have the .chart, the .ini, and the .ogg. And then you'd want to add the album artwork, as well as if you want an icon there, the icon you typically would post in there as well. So anybody who picks up the chart online, if they've never picked up one of your charts before, they have an icon in the background. And then finally, you have the preview that you'd want to add. So the preview.mp3 just allows you to have the song list open up so it doesn't play exactly from the start every single time. So after the export stage, you do the test stage, which is through Clone Hero. So instead of doing all of the testing through Moonscraper, you do it through Clone Hero. So you check to make sure the notes are correct, the lyrics are popping up in Clone Hero as you want them, all the information on the right side during song selection is popping up how you like, And then if there's something that's wrong, you can just backtrack through that checklist again to make sure you're there. So after you've done the testing stage, you do the compression and distribution stage, which is posting that zip file that you have anywhere you want on the internet, whether it be a Google Drive or Chorus or on Reddit. Then it has some option that people can immediately go download the chart that you just made. So I hope this video was helpful for anybody who's trying to chart using Moonscraper. If there's anything else that you'd like to see me go through in depth, just leave a comment down below and I'll try to get at least an individual video on those, especially if I get a lot of traction for them. Be sure to follow me on some of my other socials. I typically stream on Twitch Monday to Wednesday and Friday and Saturday between 9 p.m. Eastern Time, typically for about 4 to 5 hours. Can be Clone Hero, any variety of other games, as well as subscribe to the YouTube channel for the charts that I post. And follow me on my Twitter account, which is @Tolberto_Games. It'll give you some content updates as well as potential polls, other links and directions to some of the other ways to find me. Thanks everybody for watching. See you in the next video if I make one. So deuces.